I uncovered my wife's secret scheme to leave me with nothing after 12 years of marriage. So I vanished, transferred my assets, and filed for divorce while she was away on a month-long girls' trip with her affair partner. I, 37M, had been married to my wife, 35F, for 12 years. We met in college, dated for 2 years, and tied the knot shortly after graduation. We had no children, just a house in a nice neighborhood, and what I believed was a stable and happy life together. However, I started noticing changes in her behavior. She became secretive with her phone, started working late, and frequently attended weekend conferences that seemed to appear out of nowhere. I wasn't the jealous type, so at first I dismissed it as work-related stress. That changed when I accidentally stumbled upon a second phone hidden in her gym bag while searching for the car keys she had borrowed. The phone was locked, but the notifications were visible on the screen. There were multiple messages from someone saved as D with heart emojis. That alone raised my suspicions. But what truly set off alarm bells was a small notebook tucked inside the bag's side pocket. Inside the notebook was a detailed plan outlining her strategy for divorcing me. It included consultations with 3 different divorce attorneys, along with their contact information, financial plans to secretly drain our assets, and even notes on how to paint me as having anger issues to gain an advantage in the divorce settlement. The most disturbing section was titled Evidence Collection, where she had listed ways to provoke me into arguments and record my reactions as proof. I was devastated, but made sure not to show any signs that I had discovered her plans. During this period, I noticed her taking pictures of valuables in our house and making discreet phone calls whenever she thought I wasn't around. One day, I overheard a fragment of her conversation where she said, I deserve everything after wasting 12 years with him. Instead of confronting her, I reached out to my brother James for advice. He had gone through a messy divorce 5 years ago and warned me not to reveal that I knew anything. The moment she realizes you're onto her, she'll speed up her plans, he cautioned. You need to be smarter and act faster. Taking his advice, I consulted a divorce attorney, who confirmed my worst fears. In our state, if I could prove infidelity and financial deception, it would significantly impact the divorce settlement, but I needed solid evidence. I quietly began gathering proof. I discovered that my wife had opened secret bank accounts without my knowledge. I also found email exchanges between her and D, whose real name was Derek, dating back 8 months. The emails detailed their relationship and future plans together. The final confirmation came when my wife announced she was going on a month-long girls' trip to Europe with her friends. I knew she was lying because I had already seen text messages confirming that she was meeting Derek there. The day after she left, I put my plan into action. I legally transferred my share of our assets into accounts my attorney helped me set up. I moved all my personal belongings out of our house and into a new apartment I had secured before she left. I had divorce papers prepared, citing infidelity and financial fraud, with all the evidence attached. I froze our joint credit cards and removed her as an authorized user on my personal accounts. I informed our family and close friends about the situation to prevent her from twisting the story and making me look like the villain. The most satisfying part? I filed for divorce while she was still posting Instagram pictures of her girls' trip, with hashtags like hashtag bestfriendsforever and hashtag noboysallowed, completely unaware that I knew she was actually with Derek. 3 days into her trip, her sister, Elizabeth, called me in a panic, saying she couldn't reach her and asking if everything was okay. I simply told her the truth, that her sister wasn't on a girls' trip, but was with her affair partner in Europe, and that I had already filed for divorce. Elizabeth was shocked, but not entirely surprised. She admitted that she had suspected something for a while, but didn't want to get involved. She's been different lately, Elizabeth said. More secretive, always glued to her phone. I should have said something. While my wife was still abroad, reality finally caught up with her. I started receiving a flood of frantic calls and messages, first angry, then desperate, and eventually threatening legal action. Following my attorney's advice, I ignored all communication and let everything go through the proper legal channels. I had also uncovered that she had been embezzling funds from my business account for months. I run a thriving landscaping company that I established from the ground up over the past decade. She had access to the accounts for tax purposes and had been skimming off small amounts, hoping I wouldn't notice. My accountant verified that approximately $42,000 had vanished over the past year. When my wife finally returned from Europe, abruptly cutting her trip short, she came home to find half the house vacant, divorce papers waiting, and her carefully orchestrated plans in ruins. According to our neighbor, who had been keeping me informed, she arrived with Derek, who quickly fled once he grasped the situation. Her parents called me the same day, outraged that I had acted so impulsively without discussing it with them first. My father-in-law, William, insisted on a family meeting to settle things maturely. I refused and suggested they question their daughter about her 8-month-long affair and her plans to financially sabotage me. I have all the proof, I told them, and I mean every bit of it. Ask her about Derek. Ask her about the second phone. Ask her about the $42,000 she misappropriated from my business. And ask her about the notebook where she outlined her plot to make me appear abusive. The silence on the other end lasted. So long I thought they had hung up, until my mother-in-law, Patricia, finally spoke. "William, I think we need to talk to our daughter before we say anything else." Over the next few weeks, my wife desperately tried to repair her reputation and financial standing. She told mutual friends I had become controlling and paranoid, claiming that I had misinterpreted her precautionary measures as something malicious when she was merely safeguarding herself. She even tried to portray Derek as just a supportive friend, helping her through a rough patch in our marriage. Fortunately, I had already anticipated this. I had shared selected evidence with our closest friends, not out of spite, but to protect myself from her attempts to socially alienate me. The explicit text messages between her and Derek, spanning months, made it undeniable that this was no innocent friendship. To my surprise, my brother's ex-wife, Catherine, became one of my staunchest allies. Having endured her own bitter divorce with James, she reached out after hearing what happened. "James may be my ex, but he's right about one thing. You need to protect yourself," she told me over coffee. "People who concoct schemes like this don't just give up because they got caught." She was right. My wife's next move was to claim that some of the assets I had moved were actually hers, including a cabin property we had purchased 3 years ago. What she didn't realize was that I had documentation proving the down payment came from an inheritance from my grandparents, which legally made it separate property. The divorce proceedings moved forward, but not without drama. My wife sought to stall at every turn, hoping to drain my resources with legal expenses. She challenged every piece of evidence, claiming privacy violations and coercion. Her attorney, the third one she had hired after the first two abandoned her case, even suggested that I had forged a notebook as revenge for her wanting to leave me. That strategy backfired spectacularly during a deposition when her own text messages to Derek were read aloud, including one that stated, "Once the divorce is final, and I get what I deserve from him, we can finally start our life together without secrecy." As the proceedings continued, Derek vanished from the picture. My wife showed up to a mediation session alone, looking exhausted and defeated. I later learned from Elizabeth that Derek had moved on to someone else, leaving my wife to face the repercussions of their actions alone. He told her he didn't sign up for all this chaos, Elizabeth said during one of our occasional check-in calls. "I hate what she did to you, but she's still my sister. She's lost everything. You, her reputation, her lover, and most of her friends." I might have felt sympathy if I hadn't accidentally received an email meant for her attorney, outlining a new scheme to claim emotional distress and demand alimony despite her infidelity. The email had been misdirected to me because she had misspelled her lawyer's address by one letter. Some habits die hard, I guess. The final court hearing arrived, and the judge was unmoved by my wife's pleas. The overwhelming evidence of infidelity, financial fraud, and her calculated plan to frame me was impossible to ignore. The ruling reflected this. I retained my entire business, kept the cabin, and we divided the house proceeds, but only after deducting the $42,000 she had stolen. As we exited the courtroom, my wife made one last attempt to appeal to me. "You didn't have to humiliate me like this," she said, tears in her eyes. "Like the way you were planning to handle things with me?" I replied, showing her a photocopy of her notebook page outlining her scheme. You wanted a battle. You just didn't expect to lose. Since the divorce was finalized, I've expanded my landscaping business and hired 2 more employees. The cabin has become my personal retreat, a place to unwind, fish, and clear my mind. My family and true friends have been unwavering in their support, and I'm slowly learning to trust again. Elizabeth still keeps in touch, giving me occasional updates about my ex-wife. Apparently, she's relocating to another state for a fresh start. A part of me hopes she finds whatever it was she was looking for when she threw away 12 years of marriage. The other part? It's just grateful that I discovered her betrayal before she could execute her plan. Some might think I was too harsh, but when someone meticulously plots to destroy you, both financially and emotionally, you don't owe them a warning shot. Sometimes, the best response to betrayal isn't confrontation. It's ensuring you're long gone before they pull the trigger.